Integrity is the most valuable and respected quality of leadership. Always keep your word. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around an interesting subject that has plagued the country at present. That is the Eastern Container Terminal issue. Now, are we going to sell it, lease it, or even trying to get an investor for a joint venture? However, the news that we're getting right now from the Newsfirst newsroom is the fact that the cabinet has said that the Eastern Container Terminal would operate 100% under the Ports Authority. However, Minister of Ports, that is Rohit Gunasekera, has said that a cabinet-approved negotiating committee would be appointed to look for investors to begin offering the West Container Terminal to either the Indians or the Japanese. Now, this is a story that is coming in from the newsroom. So on these lines, we will start the conversation today. We've invited 4 guests to our studio this evening. Joining us tonight on the show is Dr. Dan Gunasekera, former Executive Director of the Ceylon Shipping Corporation. Nice to have you on board, Dr. Dan. Also joining us tonight on the show is Lalitha Jayasuriya, Master Mariner, has 47 years of experience in the industry. Also joining us tonight on the show is General Nayaka, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Nice to have you on board as well, General. And also, who is no stranger to Face the Nation, Rohan, MasaKorala, CEO of the Shippers Academy. So let's start off tonight's show with Lalitha Jayasuriya, Master Mariner, to get an overview as to what this Eastern Container Terminal issue is all about. Lalitha, tell us, why is so this topic of discussion, the Eastern Container Terminal, under so much of contention right now? What is the reason behind this?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me as an ordinary citizen of Sri Lanka. I'm a retired person, so I have no vested interest anywhere. So I would like to thank you for that. And this is the first time I'm taking part in a live show. And I'm a little bit nervous at the moment, like someone facing a first ball in a debut test match. So, but I would like to start with, to answer your question about, it's not about only the East Container Terminal, it's about how we are operating our ports in Sri Lanka, in the maritime sector. There is a government policy. What?
Welcome back. We just listened to the breaking news and the voice cut of the Minister of Ports, Rohit Gunasekera. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of the show. Where you ended, Lalitha, you can continue from that point onwards.
Yes, I ended with asking whether there is any policy by Sri Lankan governments when it comes to port and especially the maritime sector. And if there is such policy, is that policy in line with the Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act? Because that's the law that is actually governing the port sector in Sri Lanka. It's enacted and passed in Parliament in 1979, came into effect on the 1st of August 1979. And that lays out how the ports should be operated in Sri Lanka. So if at all, if there's any policy made, it has to be according to Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act, right? And these terminals that is coming into operation in the private sector, with the private sector participation, has to be in accordance with the Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act. And I looked at the act, I think some of it is coming in the act, in the act of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act, item number 7, under powers of the Ports Authority. It says it has the powers to acquire, hold, take on lease, give on lease, hire, pledge, sell or otherwise dispose of any movable and immovable properties. I think on this particular one, yes, but then you need to look at, be aware that it says to acquire also. So does it say that what you have given can you acquire back? Can you take it back? What you sold, can you take it back? So this is what Act says about how the immovable and movable properties can be disposed of in the ports, in the port sector. And my third thing is that is the policy of giving these terminals with the private sector participation, whether it is foreign private sector or the local private sector, is not actually mentioned which one is to be given, and it is beneficial to Sri Lanka and its people in respect of generating income to the government coffers, employment for Sri Lankans, and further development of the maritime sector in Sri Lanka. That is what I think, in my opinion, should be looked at when we give these terminals with the private sector.
Lalitha, let's put that notion aside for the moment and look at the current 3 terminals that are operating under the Colombo port. You have the Jaya Container Terminal, you have the SAGT or the South Asia Gateway Terminal, as well as the Unity Container Terminal also operating at the Colombo port at present. And one of these terminals are handled by the private sector in Sri Lanka, that is John Keel's Holdings for that matter. So, however, right now discussions are afoot about giving away the Eastern Container Terminal. However, now that has been stopped and it is going to come under the purview of the Ports Authority. However, now discussions are going to take place with the Indian government to get a partner for the West Container Terminal. What is happening?
Well, if you start with, that's why I said that there is so consistency in how these terminals are given to the private sector, right? If you look at the SAGT, right, which is started as a BOI project, right? And there were many partners. Among them, the main partner was P&O Australia, right, who was the terminal operator, right, of the P&O group. The terminal operator of P&O Australia was the main investor in that, along with John Keel's Holdings, and then there was JP Moller and Evergreen, or subsidiary of Evergreen, and then Sri Lanka Ports Authority. But Sri Lanka Ports Authority only have 15% of that. Now, the main stakeholder in Sri Lanka in ports is Sri Lanka Ports Authority, and they have a minority share in this particular one. Yes, they have a seat in the board, but that seat is useless because you can be outnumbered by the others, right? So eventually, P&O Australia winded up business, right? As you know, the P&O group is now only operating some ferries in the North Sea, right? And some in Australia around that. That's the only business that they do. So when the main investor on that particular terminal is no longer there, they sold it to DP World, I'm sure for a handsome profit, and then DP World sold their shares to John Keel's, and today John Keel's and SLPA is holding about 60% of that, and the 40% with JP Moller and few other companies are holding.
But this container terminal in question is making profits, isn't it?
Yes.
And bringing in the foreign revenue needed for the country.
Yes, it is making profit, I agree with you. But does it come into the country now? Yes, 60% of it coming. Yeah. But earlier
you just said that Sri Lanka Ports Authority as well as
yes.
John Keel's, which is the private company in Sri Lanka, are owning 60% of the shares. So the foreign exchange is coming to the country, one way or the other.
Yes. But I have nothing against the privatization in this particular issue at the moment.
I'm trying to pick your brain on this. So are you trying to say that giving away either the Eastern Container Terminal or the Western Container Terminal is not going to bring in the foreign revenue needed for the country?
No, it will not, because it will be taken away.
Right. Thank you very much, Lalitha Jayasuriya, Master Mariner. He has 47 years of experience in the industry. I now switch on to Rohan MasaKorala, CEO of the Shippers Academy. Rohan, interestingly, you heard the news that's coming in right now saying that the government has decided, the cabinet has decided to give 100% control of the Sri Lanka Eastern Container Terminal completely to the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Now, does this take you by surprise? Because you are one person that I've seen very vocal about the importance of giving away the terminal for a consortium to operate. However, now your proposal or your idea has been put under the carpet, and there seems to be a new idea that is cropping up.
Yes, thank you first of all for having me again. First of all, the idea has not been put out. Idea has been shifted according to the latest news from one terminal to another. That immediately negates the argument of that foreign companies coming and taking your profits. Foreign companies are going to jeopardize your national security, and if it is an Indian company, it's going to take away cargo to India. It doesn't matter whether it is East Terminal or West Terminal. As far as I am concerned, I am not talking about who is who. I am talking about the global models of how ports operate, and specifically what we compete. We are not a origin port destination or what's called a gateway port country. We don't have cargo in our hands of that volume. So India is the biggest catchment area for this part of the Indian subcontinent, and then of course Bangladesh and Pakistan are the other two maritime nations. Now all those countries, including Bangladesh, who has a river port, has gone into partnerships, right? Sri Lanka is the first country who liberalized the economy in 1978. But sadly, Sri Lanka has gone backwards in that process, because we brought in at various times protectionism and nationalism into the economic picture of the country for political reasons. So I have no control over political reasons, but I am sticking by my point. Whether it is Eastern, Western or the North Newport, Sri Lanka needs to go into what is called the landlord model.
But can I safely say that the government has shifted gears again for its political mileage at present, not giving away the Eastern Container Terminal? However, now discussions are afoot about giving the Western Container Terminal. In Sinhalese they say, akka penna nangiyo dena, you know, something similar. Nangi penna akka dena. So hasn't that happened here now?
It has, but it has probably upset. I don't know whether the government came with the cabinet paper after talking to Japan and India beforehand, because there was a tripartite G2G agreement. So there is international credibility here at stake if we have not spoken to the Indian government to make such statements that we are going ahead with this kind of amendment. That is a thing for us to see, because today in the afternoon we saw a press release issued by the Indian High Commission in Colombo requesting the government of Sri Lanka to honor what it has committed at its different levels, at different governments with different leaders. So it is Sri Lanka at stake, not me or anybody of you. It's Sri Lanka's credibility, Sri Lanka's credibility on foreign direct investment, Sri Lanka's credibility on trust. All these are at stake if government is going to run policies on unions' demands. President Jayasuriya did not tolerate that in 1978. We saw so many people put out of work because he had to open up the economy. He took a stern decision. And President Chandrika Kumaratunga continued with Sri Lanka Telecom, which is a success story today. President Chandrika Kumaratunga took the decision of going into a hybrid model of landlord, which is the SAGT, right? Which is a success story. Nobody can say it's not a success story. It is a success story. Then President Mahinda Rajapaksa took the next decision to give the first ever South Asia's deepest terminal 85% to a Chinese company, which I didn't agree. I was working for his office, one of his officers. I said, yes, I am for privatization, I am for consortiums, but not giving 85% of the gold mine. Take 35%. Colleagues of mine said, no, we should have 100%, but we are different of the opinion. So, you see, Sri Lanka must know to balance things. We talk about a non-aligned policy. We are not a non-aligned country anymore. We have aligned ourselves for a lot of Chinese investments. Then we need to give space to other foreign companies also to come and invest. Because otherwise somebody will point out, say, you are Chinese. So we need to maintain that balance as well. So that is why this picture of India came into place.
So Captain Lalitha just mentioned earlier that foreign income is going to flow out of the country as a result of giving away either the Eastern Container Terminal or the Western Container Terminal.
I don't agree with that. I can show you all the countries around us which has prospered after us because of foreign investment. including Singapore, who was behind us. That country is run on foreign investment, every aspect of it, whether it is banking, tourism. Look at the tourism sector. Singapore attracts 18 million people when we attract 2.5 million. What does Singapore offer for tourism? Nothing. Concrete jungle. It's about foreigners coming in. You see the Marina Bay Sands, when you go to Singapore, anybody who has gone here sees that is the icon of Singapore. Who owns it? The Americans own it for 99 years plus. But with that ecosystem came in the Universal Studios, rest of the businesses. That is how you build hubs.
Right. Thank you very much, Rohan.
I want to give you one more, give me 1 minute. Look at, we are competing with Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai. Look at those hubs. Aren't there foreigners there? Aren't they rich countries? Aren't they earning per capita incomes of $60,000 plus in the rich world? What's wrong with them if the foreigners are taking all the money to America? Right. You must question where you are competing with. Not with India. We are not competing with India.
Right. So thank you very much, Rohan. We of course you all can have a difference of opinion as the show goes on when the second and third round begins. But just to give an overview as to where we stand right now, we want to give each an opportunity to explain about his stand on the matter. So talking to Dr. Dan Gunasekera, former Executive Director of Ceylon Shipping Corporation. Dan, interestingly, we're talking about the Western Container Terminal, not anymore about the Eastern Container Terminal, because we are 100% sure that a cabinet paper has now been put forward, and the cabinet has decided that the Sri Lanka Ports Authority will be dealing and handling the operations at the Sri Lanka at the Eastern Container Terminal. So let's talk about the Western Container Terminal. Now, Rohan brings out a very important point. Let's take a look at the Jebel Ali port for an example. You have foreign investors who are investing there, and the Jebel Ali port is one of the most busiest ports in the world at present. And let's take a look at the port in Malaysia. Let's look at the port in Singapore. All these ports are very busy at present, and all these ports are having foreign direct investors who are investing at these ports. So what is your thinking? Do you think that the Sri Lankan, at least the terminal, should be given away for a foreign direct investor, or even to be sold for a foreign direct investor, or to be leased for that matter? What is your take on it?
Again, thank you very much for inviting me as well for this very important discussion today. Now, just a quick look at how I could approach your question directly regarding the Western Container Terminal and the Eastern Container Terminal. First and foremost, we need to understand that the Port of Colombo as a whole is a gem of our economy, of the Sri Lankan economy. It's a gem. Now, why we are talking about the East Container Terminal or the West Container Terminal is because these two are parts of the south port, the southern side of the Port of Colombo. And the southern side of the Port of Colombo presently operate with three main terminals, being the CICT, SAGT, and the JCT. Now, as we all know that CICT and SAGT are under a private investment type of operation. The JCT is completely run by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Now, when we talk about the East Terminal and the West Terminal, as I heard just now in the breaking news, this cannot be practically parallelly developed, because East Container Terminal needs about 700 million rupees to develop. Are we ready to go ahead with another parallel project of the West Container Terminal? These have to be taken place gradually, step by step. We cannot go into both together. And at the moment, we are having financial difficulties, we are having economic impacts here. So we have to look stage by stage. Now, if you look at the CICT and SAGT in particular, the CICT earns 42% of the overall income of the Port of Colombo. And very surprisingly, the second place goes to the JCT, which is quite less in the depth we are talking about, because SAGT has a pretty much bigger depth than JCT. But look at the way the JCT is run. we cannot forget the feeder vessels, because feeder vessels bring business. Colombo port is a transshipment port, and feeders are very important, as well as the main liners are important as well. So that is why we need to cope up with the liner business as well as the feeder business. This is why the JCT and the ECT operations should be conducted by the Ports Authority of Sri Lanka. Now, if you look at the primary legislation, like Lalitha took us with the Sri Lankan Ports Authority Act, which says that the Sri Lanka Ports Authority's mandate is to develop, maintain and operate and provide port and other services in the ports of Colombo, Galle and Trincomalee, and now they later add on the Hambantota port. Now, that's in the preamble of the primary legislation, the Ports Authority Act. So there, it's very clear that Port Authority has the main control. But over the years, with CICT coming in, SAGT coming in, we have seen that Ports Authority has been sidelined.
So are you trying to say, Dr. Dan, that the Sri Lanka Ports Authority must continue to operate the Eastern Container Terminal, the Western Container Terminal as well, and not give it to any foreign parties to operate?
No, this is the thing, that Port Authority, in my opinion, should act not like just a landlord as at now. You know, presently it's a landlord-tenant relationship that they have, where the Port Authority operates as a landlord. But what I say previously also, that bringing in JCT and the ECT will bring the Ports Authority as the government entity in this country to bring in the national, what we need, the foreign exchange into the country is very important, because this finally goes to the general treasury. You know, Ports Authority is the collector of a revenue, very important to our economy. Right. That is why we need to place the Ports Authority in the forefront. We can have private operators.
So you're trying to say that the government is not putting the Sri Lanka Ports Authority at the forefront?
This is what we really need, because we now this
are they putting the SLPA at the forefront? Yes or no?
Not right now.
Not right now. Thank you very much, Dr. Dan Gunasekera, former Executive Director of the Ceylon Shipping Corporation. Who better to ask about the Sri Lanka Ports Authority than the Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, General Retired Daya Ratnayaka. Nice to have you on board, General. A lot of respect to you in terms of your role as a military personnel. I've seen you in action at the 222 Brigade in the Eastern Province as well. However, now your roles have switched, so let's talk about the Ports Authority itself. General, interestingly, the government has now decided that the Sri Lanka Ports Authority will operate 100% the Eastern Container Terminal. Now, this is something that you have also championed over the last few weeks. You've said there is no need to sell or lease the Eastern Container Terminal, and this has to be owned by Sri Lanka. Now, are you happy with this decision that has been taken?
Of course, Shamil. Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity given. Here it is not the case. It's not a new phenomena that decided now. Actually, when the southern port was developed in 2008 and 2012, during that period when we developed, there were 3 terminals to be developed there, namely CICT, Eastern Terminal and Western Terminal. These are the 3 terminals that were to be built in the southern port. And CICT, we know that we are operating, it's fully operational it is. And ECT also, that government definitely, during that period then we decided out of 3 terminals, 2 to be in private, then government decided 2 terminals to be on PPP basis, private public partnership basis, and the other terminal to be operated by Sri Lanka Ports Authority. The reasons were given as to why it was. So then Sri Lanka Ports Authority started planning, coordinating and developing it. So up to 420 meters, the Eastern Terminal has been built, and about 640 meters, up to 640 meters, the quay wall has been developed and built. So that was The construction completed in 2015 when the transferring of the government took place. So thereafter, for 5 years, nothing happened. Instead, that government got India and Japan involved in this, and as we all know, in 2019, the then government signed an agreement, or the MOC was signed with these all three parties together. And this is how this problem started. Then the Port Authority actually, there are reasons on privatization, doing by yourself, and there are reasons for that. But the best conclusion was to build the Port Authority, the Eastern Terminal by the Port Authority. That was the decision taken. There are reasons for it. So we have been doing that, but all of a sudden the change of government, change of policies, offers are gone, and two countries got involved, three parties got together and do. When new government came in, there was a huge challenge. So there was a huge challenge of to the port as far as the capacity is concerned. We were going beyond the capacity. For 4-5 years, we have been going beyond the capacity now, Samir. So now we had to do something quickly as a result, and in beginning of last year, we got the anti-cranes and we started operating. We placed them in mid last year and started operating Eastern Terminal.
So General, are you satisfied with the decision that the government has taken to retain the Eastern Container Terminal?
Yes, of course.
Right. Then their decision again to have a cabinet-approved negotiating committee to give away the Western Container Terminal with the intervention of the Indians. Are you happy with that decision?
With the intention, with the Indians or otherwise, it is going public-private partnership system is the one that has been decided. That's good. Actually, whether you take Indians, taking Indians at this moment, if particularly, I am not sure whether it is directly to Indian, to be given to Indian and Japanese, or it is open call RFP and get the bidders.
Based on what the Minister of Ports said a short while ago, they're looking for an Indian company.
Right. If it is Indian at this moment, it is very good, because the Colombo Port business, if you take in, 82% of our business in Colombo Port is transshipment. Out of this 82%, 66% is Indian quota. So look at that. So if therefore, then about another 10% from Bangladesh. So there is a possibility of improving this, sustaining this is a requirement. So getting an Indian party operating this will have definitely an advantage.
But General, this change in policy right now of the government, I know I can safely ask you this question because you're also a political appointee right now with the government. Don't you think that this decision is misleading the public? It goes on to show in the eyes of the general public that the government is doing the right thing by not selling the Eastern Container Terminal. However, at the back of the mind of the government, they want to give away the Western Container Terminal. Now, how interesting is that?
Yeah, but if you look at like that, you can make a case. And here, but as Rohan very well mentioned earlier, we had to, because this is an international business. This is the international party getting involved. It is not only one party developing a port. And say, if you look at the entire world operation system, about 80% of port operations is taking place with the support of investors from outside the countries, and only about 20% by the countries themselves. That is how it is. So here in Sri Lankan context, you have to go for all those all such combinations, because we don't have number of ports. Out of the ports available in Sri Lanka, about 90-95% of all our operations taking place through Colombo. So therefore,
if that is the case, General, you should be happy that the Hambantota port was given on lease to the Chinese.
No, giving on lease is a different. The way it has been given is not right according to my concepts, because
the government was able to get $1.1 billion as a result of giving it on lease.
Yeah, that's
right. However,
right.
Right now the government is saying the rhetoric about not selling state assets, not giving away state assets, and then hoodwinking the people by giving away state assets, and also saying that
No, it is
the Hambantota
actually
port
the-
deal was
the
a raw deal, was a bad deal.
Samir, it is the terminology that you're trying to say. And however much the government is saying, even the previous, the debate last 2-3 weeks, it was not giving away. But you're inviting somebody to come and invest. That's if you put it that way, it is right. Hambantota has already given away. But the Eastern Terminal, the last 2-3 weeks, it was inviting someone to come and operate.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's a very subjective term. If you look at the land that has been given to other companies right opposite the golf face green. If you look at the land that has been given on Port City, it's a very subjective term about giving away and inviting investors, because there's a fine line between giving away and inviting investors. So I leave it at that for the viewer to decide as to whether it's going to be given away or whether it's going to be leased or whether it's going to really invite investors to come in and invest in the country. So I open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate right is Nadim Majid. On to my immediate left is Disal Kapuge, and on to my far left is John Fernando. John, let's start off the show with you today.
Thank you, Shamir. So my first question is directed to you, General Daratnayaka. Now, despite the decision that was taken by the government to hold 100% ownership of these container terminal, in your view and in your expertise, I'll formulate my question in this way. We know, other than the investment that will be gained if we did go for a partnership with India, if we gave 49% of the container terminal to India, with the money also comes the expertise, knowledge, the technology, foreign technology and all of that. So take into consideration all of that. Does the SLPA, the Sri Lanka Port Authority, have the capacity to 100% develop this container terminal? Does it make enough profits to develop this container terminal at the moment?
Yeah, of course. Your question is whether we have the capacity of developing it and operating it.
100% Sri Lankan.
Yes, we have the capacity of, our engineers are capable of developing, planning and developing it. So already we have done it, we have completed the plan, we have been doing it. So the timeline, if you take, and the way the other people are doing, we have been doing it, we have done it. So then now the next question is, if you ask, we have the capacity of developing it, our engineers have the capacity of doing that and working, all that is possible. Then money required. So yes, the certain amount of money the Port Authority has, then we have to go for a loan from the local bank or outside. Port Authority has the capacity of taking loans. We have that, we can do that. Then operating it, yes, of course we can do that, and we are capable. Even now we are operating JCT. JCT is the same line like the CICT, SAGT and all other things. We have very capable people. We have top class operators. If you compare it, actually I don't want to mean terminals. If you look at the competition between all three terminals, we are not second to anybody. JCT. So we have that expertise, we have that capability, we have that capacity.
No, but
so,
General,
yes.
we have seen, I don't know whether Rohan and Captain LK and also Dr. Gunasekera Dr. Dan would agree, but whenever there is an issue, let's talk about COVID-19, the first wave and the second wave, what happened at the Sri Lanka ports was appalling. What happened at the Sri Lanka ports was appalling, because everything... The appalling situation, because everything at the port came to a standstill.
No.
Because I being an exporter, we went through a very rough patch to get a liner to come and dock at the Sri Lankan ports and send a container outside. Yes, you can...
Samir, if you're trying to generalize it, I will not agree. And I can give you statistics. And we have almost a year now, from March to this date, almost 10, 11 months. Out of which only 3 weeks we had a serious issue.
So 3 weeks, General, for an exporter is a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
we never closed the port. We never closed the port.
That meant that the Sri Lankan government lost foreign exchange.
Yes.
As the revenue of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority's incompetence at that time.
It is not incompetency. You don't use that word, please, because this Corona thing came, and you must come and see the way that we are handling Corona. Here it is the doctors involved from the health ministry came and said the best system available. So corona situation, if you get me to explain it, is right around Colombo, the port around the port, the worst area even to date, from October to date. From March to October, we did not have any problem as far as the operation concerned. 24/7 we operated as normal. Actually, other countries around, the regional ports, had serious issues, but we were doing exceptionally well. We have been getting commendation from right around the world. But October came in, Gampa situation came in, 30% of our workforce from Gampa, but still we manage it. Then Blue Mandal, almost all our quarters are located in Blue Mandal area. Then Grand Pass, all these area, about 70-80% of our staff, not only ours, other assisting or the related organizations working with the port had that issue. But in spite that, only 2 days we had serious problem at the JCT. Then other 2 terminals were operating. Then SAGT had about 3 to 4 days problem, not 100% closed down, but still had problems. But other 2 terminals were alternatively working. And CICT had about 2 to 3 days problem, then other two terminals were operating. We have never closed down 100%. The issue that you are talking about, the exporters had issues, not because exactly the port authority, Colombo port problem. Even to date we have issues, but it's an international issue, it's a regional issue if you look at. So it is not only the port authority.
Yeah, but being an exporter myself, by being an exporter myself, General, there were long queues
yes. There were long queues, Samir. There were long queues, and some of your containers have been dropped somewhere else in the regional ports. Then your containers, still some of the containers to come here, because that's a serious issue. If you
so let's get back to that in a minute, but I want to get through to Rohan on this. Rohan, interestingly, you said a very right statement. You said, whatever we do, we have to do it for the country, and that is very important. But right now, the government's decision, if that was the right decision to make, to give away the Eastern Container Terminal, to bring in revenue, to bring in to make Sri Lanka port one of the busiest ports in the subcontinent, if that was the logic, if that was the ethos, if that was the way forward, why didn't the government stick to it?
Good question. Giving in to unions is the answer here. So, as far as I am concerned, it's a shock for me because Sri Lanka is not progressive in its free economy. Sri Lanka is putting gates here and there, and we might be the losers at the end game. Time will tell that story. But sadly, as a country, probably since late Athulat Mudali gone, we haven't had a policy towards the maritime sector.
Do you agree with General Ratnayaka's statement saying that the Sri Lanka Ports Authority has the technical know-how and the capability to manage the Eastern Container Terminal?
Sri Lanka Ports Authority is not a global port operator or a competitor. Sri Lanka Ports Authority should have been a global port operator and a competitor if we went in the right direction. What I say is, in year 2000, when I was in the port board with Mr. Ronnie Dimel as the finance minister, we took a decision to corporatize the JCT, that is the Jaya Container Terminal, to segment it out of the SLPA, to make it a company so that it can go and bid for Indian terminals, right? Make it a 100% global professional port. But today, General will agree, there is corruption, the accounting systems are not right, you can't get a JCT account is not there, there's a SLPA account, right? So these are very old government systems are still running. This export strategy, I can show you this, the government, both governments have agreed, the current government endorsed this. This has all of these problems of the port. It says to change the act. It says to make it a landlord port. It says to make it in line with the Singapore Maritime Singapore Port Authority system. So obviously we are not there. This is done by not anybody, public-private partnership. Over 150 people were consulted for 1.5 years, including the Ports Authority participated. all the chambers. It has been signed by CASA, Association of Container Operators, Freight Forwarders, Hub Operators. Everybody has signed this document. This official cabinet passed document, the way forward. Way forward is public-private partnerships, and which very clearly says,
sorry, Rohan,
presenting
so
a
that's
landlord
signed by
model.
the unions as well.
Pardon?
That's signed by the unions as well.
This is not signed by the unions. This is signed. This is the document done by the Sri Lankan government with the International Trade Center supported. So in one sentence it says, presenting a landlord model to promote FDI and joint ventures. That is what the future of this country should be, in line with our competitors, not with anybody else. That's why I said we made mistakes in 1990s. When Maersk wanted to invest in this country, we said no. And we were very busy building Oluville International Port without any R&D, without any business feasibility. Hambantota same, I must tell you. I was one of the speakers at Hambantota when it was opened, right? Hambantota, what happened was, there was a feasibility on construction. That is the engineer's job. Yes, our engineer said you can do it, and they did it with the Chinese support, right? But they never did a business feasibility. That is why for the last 10 years, they could not do business in that port properly to get a proper return on investment. Finally, we had to go to China because nobody else took it. When the others valued it, they valued at $690 million, whereas we had spent $1.5 billion. Right? Our port system has been mismanaged. That's the truth. We don't have a national policy on ports. That is the problem here. We have been talking.
So, Rohan, do you feel that the national policy should be this landlord model?
Absolutely. I am a believer of the landlord model. It's not about me. I look at the rest of the world. General agreed. I have the latest reports. Global ports and container terminal operators, 80% of the world's ports are managed by terminal operators and private sector. 21% is managed by state, major ports. And if you look at where we compete, our competition is, for God's sake, not India, not Pakistan or Bangladesh. We compete with Singapore,
And
Malaysia, Jebel Ali, and we created competition in Oman because of our late entry.
Yeah. Captain Lalitha, you, in your remarks, you seem to not be very fond of this landlord-tenant model. I think you seem to indicate that that the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, that it shouldn't be playing the role of the landlord.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm not fond of it, but I'm in disagreement in this position that we are in today. Right now, Rohan is of the view that even Port of Singapore is actually run by private investors and so on. But Singapore Ports Authority, Singapore ports are actually run by two parties, right? The two parties are PSA. The two main terminal operators are PSA Corporation Limited and Jurong Port, right? And both ports can accommodate all kinds of vessels, right? And the Port of Singapore mainly consists of terminals located in 4 locations, but they are all integrated, right? And the terminals are managed by 2 commercial port operators called PSA Singapore Terminals, mainly handling container traffic, and Jurong Port Limited, that is handling bulk cargo and conventional cargo. They do also handle a small amount of containers, right?
So the state of Singapore is
it is state of Singapore which is in control. There may be investors into this thing, but the control is with PSA.
But Captain, I mean, that's what Rohan is saying as well, right? The state of Singapore is the landlord.
No, state of Singapore is not the landlord. Is their landlord and also the operator.
But Captain LK, don't forget that we witnessed one of the shipping lines, that's Maersk, going out of Singapore and moving to Malaysia when there was an issue with the Singaporean government at that time. And as a result of that, the Singapore government had to invite Maersk back to the country.
You're wrong again. Maersk Line tried to twist the arm of PSA, and they threatened that they are giving in about 3 million TEUs a year to PSA to handle, that their cargo, that the volumes that they bring in. And they
But as a result, they went to Malaysia.
Wait.
Yeah.
They wanted to have a terminal of their own in Singapore waters, which the PSA disagreed. And they said, okay, we are pulling out from Singapore and went to Palapas, Tanjung Palapas, which is operated by Malaysian government and Malaysian controlled consortium.
But
whatever
the Singapore government at that time, the port there, lost a lot of TEUs as a result of Maersk moving out.
Yes, initially, of course, when somebody pull out, volumes you lose, right? I can come into that Colombo also, how we recovered, right? How JCT recovered when JCT come in there. Now, to answer your question, the Maersk line, when they pulled out, they said, okay, if you don't agree with our policies of running ports, you're welcome to go back. So they went to Palapas. But the Palapas couldn't give the service that Singapore gives, right? And then Singapore never invited. The marketing team, they have a very, very strong marketing team. They went ahead. Within 6 months, they recovered that 3 million that they lost because of Maersk pulling out and going to Palapas. And when Palapas couldn't give the service that Maersk wanted, Maersk slowly came back with the volumes to Singapore again, and Singapore Ports Authority will come back as a customer. That's all. That's what happened. Singapore never went begging for Maersk line to come there. Maersk line
Now
learned
that's an
a
interesting point, Rohan. Now, interestingly, this story about Maersk pulling out of Singapore was one of the most contention or one of the most spoken about topics at that time, and especially going to Malaysia, and as a result of that, the Malaysian port saw a lot of TEUs coming in.
Yeah.
So Captain
You
LK
can
is
see-
making a lot of sense here now,
You can see
saying
immediately how the competition tried to drag the customer. Customer is Maersk. Maersk is the #1 client they wanted.
the world, yeah.
In the world, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted the clients. Malaysia offered Maersk to come in. So there was a rift between Singapore and
but
Malaysia.
Singapore never went with the begging bowl to Maersk. That's what
Well,
Captain LK said.
Whether they went with the begging bowl or not, Singapore came back. Maersk came back to Singapore
That
in
is
large
because
volumes.
that's because of
Of business realities.
Yeah.
Because of Singapore, I must correct him. Singapore has different models. Singapore operates through a company called Temasek. That is how the government of Singapore invests in various businesses. Maritime Ports Authority is the Singapore government's main body. Under that, they have created what is called the PSA CSA International and PSA Singapore. There are two there. There are two ports separately, right? PSA International invests in global ports. PSA Singapore is the one that goes into joint ventures, and they have joint ventures with many shipping lines, including the Philippine terminal operators are also in Singapore, right? There are Chinese operators also in Singapore. So there's a multitude of operators working with PSA.
No, but the question is, Rohan, Captain LK's point is, we don't have to go behind anyone.
You don't
If
have
the
to go
port is
behind anyone.
competent,
I
if the
agree
port is
with you.
the port has the right natural habitat of attracting vessels, then be it. It will come. You don't have to worry.
It doesn't work like that. Natural habitat was not Salala was never a natural habitat. We built it for them. When Maersk wanted to build here, invest in Sri Lanka, we said no. They went to Oman, which is not a natural place at all. They put money with the Omani government, Maersk and 3 other private parties, and build a port from scratch. Today they have a transshipment volume of 4.2 million after 20 years. We, after running for 40 years, have 7.2 million, thanks to the Indian subcontinent location so close by. Because we don't have a policy. What I am trying to say here is, Singapore, you ask the Singapore government, they will say our model is landlord model. It's black and white written in the Singapore websites. You go to the port authority, you have not said that I am a landlord port. We have a hybrid mixed. Now you see the unions calling the shots, right? What makes you think that East Container Terminal, if it is now, as they say, it's gone, which politician is going to not put people into that terminal? Every politician, without any fear, I will tell you, has put their catchers into the terminals. When I was in the port, when Mr. Ronnie Dimel, there were people for every 80 meters to clean the drains. This is the inefficiency with you bring in with public sector.
So,
right?
Dr. Dan, now interestingly, Rohan makes a point. You just heard what Captain LK said, and also General Ratnayaka speaking about difference of opinion. Of course, you had Captain LK speaking about the importance of the Singapore model. That came under contention from Rohan saying that is not the model that they have. And then General Jayasuriya saying the Ports Authority have the capability of doing what is required for the betterment of the country. In your opinion, what do you think should be the way forward for Sri Lanka at present? Must we attract FDIs through our port, or can we open it for private companies in Sri Lanka and then get the funding and accordingly develop? Would that model work, Dr. Dan?
No, while I was listening to this argument, I should say that I encountered the misconceptions and confusions here. Because I do not agree with Rohan's stand on that we could compare the Singapore model and the Sri Lankan model. In our Sri Lankan model, the Ports Authority is not only a landlord, it is a mix, it is a regulator, and so much of hybrid situations come into play here, right? And now Rohan showed the national export strategy, which I'm also part of that, but that is a part that applies to the exports. But when you take the ports and shipping or the maritime, it's a much vast area. Now, we have been trying to bring in a port and maritime policy in this country. About 6 pieces of such documents have been made. The recent one where we created this national policy for maritime and logistics, where I was involved as the moderator of that. We tried to bring in all these differences and wipe out these differences so that we can have a very fair play in this particular policy that we are proposing for the country. This is for the entire maritime section. It is not restricted to exports or rather imports or to some other area.
But the point is, Dr. Dan,
yeah.
We're talking about an international business here. We're not talking about a domestic business anymore.
Yeah, I'm trying to come to that actually, because even though we are talking about international business here.
No, do we have the capability? No, that's the point here.
Yeah, I will come. It is, we are having this internal problem, right? Now, answering whether we do have the capacity in our country, of course we do have, because I mean, look at the maritime professionals produced by Sri Lanka in all types of sectors.
No, but
with
the point
regard to
yeah,
the maritime.
But the point is, Dr. Dan, with a lot of respect to you and all 4 gentlemen here, I'm playing the devil's advocate here, so I'm posing difficult questions for every individual here. So, looking at a eagle's eye perspective on this, this is an international business. Having professionals in Sri Lanka to handle the business of an international nature is not the way forward. You have to have an international player who is already in the business. Maersk, for an example, the Salalah port could be cited as one of the best examples. When they want to invest in Sri Lanka, they had to go to Oman and invest. So having professionals in Sri Lanka is well and good. But can they bring in the volumes that are required?
No, this is the most important thing. In order to bring the volumes, we must attract the big liners to come to Sri Lanka. That is why CICT is surviving in this way. SAGT is surviving in this way. What we need for a terminal is, rather than a terminal operator, I mean, if we look at the SLPA being the terminal operator, we need to bring in the big liners here.
So you're saying the Adani Group or any other company should not be involved, but the liner itself,
exactly.
may it be CMA CGM,
yes.
may it be Maersk,
or MSC, whatever, I don't
MSC
want to.
or One Line or whatever.
Yeah.
The line has to be involved. Is
exactly.
that your point?
This is what we need. This is what we need. This is where we need to address our issue.
So I want to put a pause for a thought at the moment for a few seconds. I want to quickly switch to General Jayasuriya. Now, interesting. Companies itself won't bring in the revenue. Tie up with an international liner. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. This,
but the government was hell bent to give this to the Adani Group.
No, Adani, they are port operators.
Yeah.
Port operators.
Yeah.
Then you have to get the liners involved. Then you have to get other people, other investors involved who are this, as Rohan mentioned, there are number of players in running a port.
Yeah.
So you have to get all those people involved in.
So the
Then
operating part can be done by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. That is what
It is-
Captain LK and Dr. Dan are saying. That
It is
aspect
not
can
a-
be done by
Samir,
the Ports Authority.
it isn't a question of your capability of running it. So Sri Lanka, if you are trying to take it as Eastern Terminal alone and one-off terminal, you know, as a Colombo port if you take it. So there are all kinds of options. Actually, as I agree with Rohan, and we, for last 70, 71 years of independence, we never had a consistent policy for running port or running any other business in the country. As a result, we are in a position like this. We can't take Singapore as an example and compare our thing, because they have a country, they have a nice system of running that country, they have consistency in their policies, marketing system, all that is in place. And that is why they, when we together, we started Colombo Port and Singapore Port, and we are at 7.2 million, they are at 40 million. That's the difference. So they are running the third port now. We are still struggling with the same port. So here, I mean, you can't compare Singapore and yes, of course, they are our number one competitor. But we, as the way that we have been running this, so we need to have all kinds of options in one system. That is what I have said.
But General, the problem is, this is not about this issue about the Eastern Container Terminal or the Western Container Terminal or any other terminal of the Sri Lanka port. It's not about attracting foreign direct investments anymore. There is something more underlying to it.
Yes.
That is the geopolitical issue.
Absolutely.
You have China operating one terminal. As a result of that, the Indians now want to operate one terminal. Yeah. Initially, I don't know whether you recollect, General, you had the Indians wanting the Trincomalee port as well.
Yes.
And that came to a complete standstill thanks to President Maithripala Sirisena, who put his foot down and said that the Eastern terminal is not up for sale or will be given to the Indians.
That he was referring not to Trincomalee port, but the Eastern terminal itself.
Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. So right now the issue is, this is not about finding an investor. This is about satisfying our neighbor, isn't it?
Yeah, that is also one of the major factors here. Geopolitics is a major factor. The nature of this business is another major factor. Then having your own stake as a country, as an isolated country, rather a country located in a very strategically important place, right, almost right in the center of the world, and all those.
But we say we are a non-aligned country.
But non-aligned is, as Rohan mentioned, it is non-alignment is
no, I am
maybe
not
strategically.
Saying this, I'm not saying this is what the president is saying.
Politically it may be, or strategically it may be, but business-wise we are aligned to many other countries. It has to be so. It's my personal opinion. So, and but this business is not non-aligned or domestic or anything. This is an international business. We have proved beyond reasonable doubts. 82% of our business is international transshipment. So only 18% of our local business. So likewise, so
won't this move anger the Chinese, who have bought the port in lease for 99 years, the Hambantota port, and they have an initiative called the One Belt, One Road initiative. Now you know the US government, through its Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, is trying to push India to purchase the Eastern Container Terminal and upset the apple cart a little bit and show some volatility with regard to US, China and India relations. So it's all about this game, and the government is in the midst, sandwiched in between everyone and trying to play the game, isn't it?
Yeah, Shamir, you're absolutely right. Here, if you take it, then Sri Lanka is located very strategically in a place where it's very strategically important. So therefore, other stakeholders were getting involved. Therefore, country must have a superb policy to maintain all that. This is a reality. So if you have your expectations to make it a huge port, international hub and all that, but you have to understand the ground realities. One of the ground realities, and you mentioned, we are in the subcontinent, India is a great player, major player here. China is a major player. Japan is on the other side. European Union on that side. Then the Americans are on that. So we are sandwiching in between. Therefore, we as a country, we must have a super policy. We must have a system where we handle all that and get the best advantage of all that.
But Rohan,
for the best interest of the country.
Yeah, but Rohan, the problem is right now not the fact that the government is going to give this on lease or selling it or finding an investment. That is not the problem. The problem is the rhetoric the government started to play at the last presidential election, at the general election, saying we won't sell state assets.
Correct. See the
and that rhetoric is biting them right now.
Absolutely right. So this is sad part of Sri Lankan politics. It doesn't go with the economic politics of this country. So the average voter of the village really doesn't understand. So every time you come, you twist a story and tell. That's why I said we don't have national policies, and General Ratnayaka agreed. But one thing we did properly in this country was, with continuous policy from regime to regime, was the only successful product with a return on investment after each project was the Mahaweli development project. Government to government, and it was started by the Americans, funded by the Americans, surveyed by the Americans, 1958. I must say, if you put into your question, and in today's context, if we started the Mahaweli project today, you would have never taken off the ground. Because the mindset of the people, when you poison the mindset of the people against foreigners and foreign investments, and don't see what your competition is doing. I'm not, forget about if you don't want to compete Singapore came behind us and overtook us, no. That's a fact, no. If the Singapore Prime Minister said that time, don't look at Ceylon, it's the second biggest economy in Asia, don't compare Ceylon, we can't go there, then then something wrong. I don't take that attitude. I look at the best. After Singapore came Dubai, a desert sandstorm place. Today you know what it is. Then came Oman Salalah, then came Malaysia. All of these came, so we are competing with them, not anybody else. What have they done? There's a thing called, you don't have to reinvent the wheel in certain business models. You just compete, thoroughly compete, and you create the business climate for competition to compete. If you have an advantageous position. I always say, look at the IPL cricket. Cricket became so different because foreign players were brought into the system. That was marketed, and foreigners gave that flesh to the Indian cricket industry. Transformed the whole cricketing fraternity. So you need to think different. You can't say we cannot compare Singapore. We have to compare Singapore.
Captain LK now directly pointing the finger at you.
Yeah, okay.
Directly. Directly pointing the finger at you. So I need a response from you now.
Yes.
Look at probably because of the age.
No, we are good friends.
We are good friends. We are from the same school, and we are.
So directly point the finger.
We argue about many things on Facebook as well.
Yeah. So but now it's a good time to argue on national television.
On national TV, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, Rohan brought a point that that we are in competition with regional ports when it comes to transshipment, but what is the volumes that we're handling? We are 24th. We say we are 24th port in the world. But what are we handling? We are handling only 7 million TEUs a year. All terminals put together, right? We are handling that's all. Now, if you look at the ports, that number one is Shanghai, which is not a transshipment port because they have so much production out of China. Shanghai is getting 42 million out of Shanghai, right? And then Singapore is number two. Being such a small country, means number two, with handling 36.6 million TEUs, right? With so much competition, they are still remaining at number two. And only China has overtaken because there is so much production and demand for Chinese product. It will remain like that until this Chinese economic bubble remains a bubble. When it bursts, all these ports will collapse, right? Because there is nothing to come in there, nothing to take out. It will collapse. So as long as this is there, yes, it is there. And then number 3, 4, 5 are also Chinese ports. So when you go to, then you have a transshipment port in Busan, which is in South Korea, which is handling 21.5 million TEUs. right now, right? And then you have Hong Kong, which is also a transshipment point, which is handling 19.5 million TEUs. Then comes Jebel Ali and Dubai, which is handling 15 million TEUs. Then you have Rotterdam, which is handling 14.5
Point
million.
is, what is the point?
Point is that these transshipment points are different, right? In our transshipment point that we are talking about, our hinterland, the supporters are from the Indian subcontinent. But when you say Indian subcontinent, what is the quantity that we are getting, right? We are getting only 4.4 million TEUs out of India as transshipment to Colombo to be shared by all these terminals. But 4.4 million TEUs is not the transshipment volume from India, right? There is another 4.4 million to 5 million going to Jebel Ali and Dubai. There's another 5 million is going to Singapore, right? And is the Indian government or Indian operator going there and say, we are giving you 5 million, so give us a terminal there? Or are they going to Dubai and saying, you know, we are giving you so much, give us a terminal there? No, because we haven't got, if the India giving us all these things, all the transshipment, which we can't handle because we don't have the capacity to handle at the moment. So they are going to Singapore,
So
they are
now,
going to Dubai.
do you agree that there is no capacity at present for us to handle?
We are operating at the moment in full capacity. I mean, if you look at,
is that right?
Capacity plus.
Capacity plus.
Yes.
So we have to develop an eastern container terminal.
we have to, because
now
we,
all four gentlemen are in agreement with that.
We do have a capacity problem in Port of Colombo for big ships,
Yeah.
not for the smaller ones. If you look at the Port of Colombo ships that arrive, 10% are the big ones. But that 10% is growing, right? So that 10% needs extra capacity in the new terminal. That is why we need big ship capacity in the Port of Colombo,
So Rohan,
not the
let's
small
say
ship
we
capacity.
bite your argument, we swallow your argument and we say, okay, it's important to give it to a consortium to manage.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the $500 million bid that has been put as a cap on this?
I have not gone into the finance, but if the government feels that they are happy with the investment, it is
No,
the
no, are
government.
you happy? It's not about the government, but
I
are
mean-
you happy?
I mean,
do you think we can fetch more money out of it, or do you think $500 million is good enough?
Well, if it was gone into open bidding, which the previous government did go in 2016, there were 17 bidders, 5 were shortlisted, cabinet subcommittees were appointed. When President Sirisena took a U-turn and said, no, this is going to be managed by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. So that is what I am saying, inconsistency of government policy. President Sirisena's manifesto's first page says Sri Lanka privatization will be managed like Singapore's Temasek model. So I am saying, it's not me, about Sri Lankan leaders what they are saying, right?
No, but there was a point, Rohan, I don't know whether you recollect, but the history says that at one point there was an offer for $379 million. However, the government at that time turned it down because the bid was very low.
That was the CICT.
Yeah.
That was during the what's called the economic crisis, 2008-9. Not many bidders came. So bidders were putting lower bids.
Yeah, but the government said no. The categorical
Government said no at that time. So they went. It was a bidding process.
So why can't the government say no to this as well, saying
Well,
it's a low bid?
They have not said it's a low bid. That's the issue. They have not opened it up for the bidding. Simply as that, you have to understand, this is not a commercial bidding. This particular model was G to G to G because of the geopolitical.
Is that advantageous to the country?
I would always say consortium, transparent bid. But the politics of it I am not involved. But we all agree around the table there is a political problem because we have imbalanced our political balance. So therefore, India being our neighbor, India being keen that its cargo does not go through its competitor or the adversary very much, they also would like to have a stake in Colombo because they are supporting Colombo to grow. That is their position, India's position. So obviously India is our customer. So why are we fighting with the customer here?
But when you look at the Indian government's history with Sri Lanka, Rohan, India has never wanted Sri Lanka to succeed.
Well, I
can
think
give
that
you,
policy has changed.
88.
That policy has changed.
89.
That policy has completely changed. If you look at the recent politics with Bangladesh, you will see the relationship build up with Bangladesh, Nepal. right? So countries do make policy. I agree, we have had so many issues, but are you saying we should be continuously in a fighting mode with India and develop our country?
History, I'm saying.
Yeah, so
look at the history.
are we going to live in the history, or are we going to move forward? It's the next generation of youngsters, you guys who are younger than me.
But look at the statement that was issued by the Sri Lankan High Commission, Indian High Commission in Colombo, right after the Prime Minister's statement came out.
So
directly infringing the sovereignty of an independent state.
Where sovereignty is first, when you sign an agreement between state to state, you have a sovereignty issue immediately when you commit. When you commit to a UN convention, you immediately give something of your sovereignty. You are committing to a global understanding. That is why UN conventions come, right? UN convention. Why do they come and hit you at the back saying you're violating this, that, and this? Because why do we? If we sign to a convention,
but when there are conventions, we learn this in grade 12 economics, Rohan.
Yes.
International conventions are null and void in the face of the law of the land.
Correct.
So there is no reason for the government to say we signed agreement in 2009 and hence we have to stick to it. So
no, you can withdraw. You can withdraw. So you can withdraw. So a state.
So
must,
if the government was so hell bent about not selling these selling state assets to other companies or other countries, they can withdraw.
They can. So what I am trying to say is, you say the Indian government has made a statement. I also saw it this afternoon.
The Indian High Commission.
Indian High Commission on behalf of the government of India, obviously. Well, if they were not informed that there's going to be, we have signed the tri-party agreement, they say your leaders have continuously given assurances. So we also have a responsibility as a state. We have to maintain ethics and standards. So we must first discuss with the Indians and the Japanese and say, okay, we have a problem here, we'll sort it out, and then we'll get back to you. So if that is not done,
Rohan,
India has the right to ask for the...
If I may now, we talked about all these issues here now, especially with the ECT situation, and I'd like the other panelists to also contribute to this. What consequences could we expect, especially from India and other investors who will be willing to invest in Sri Lankan resources? So now this has sort of set a precedent that Sri Lanka sort of like shifts gears, according to Shamir's words, when it comes to agreements. And this precedent could definitely affect our future when it comes to investments. So what are the immediate consequences that we can expect as a country for our economy and the shipping industry as a whole, moving forward, in particularly focusing on the ECT issue?
Yeah, so I told you at the beginning, I mean, I let the others speak. I see the international community will look at it in a very different angle. They would assume very
correct. Could it lead to them boycotting investing in Sri Lanka?
I don't know what extent things can happen. The global community is very powerful. Nobody can do it in isolation. Let me remind you something. When President Sirisena tried to stop the asbestos being imported from Russia, immediately they found a bug in our tea. Nobody got onto the streets against Russia. So we are selective in countries, you see. We are selective in countries. We have to be open and straightforward. Why are we selective? That is why we are geopolitically imbalanced. Anything American, we are on the streets. Anything Russian, we keep quiet, right? Anything Indian, we are on the street. Anything Chinese, we are not making a big fuss, right? So if we are going on this direction, if that is our foreign policy, I don't know where we are heading for. That's all I am saying, right? I am talking about running commercial ports, the global outlook, how it is happening. So if we are not going on that direction, let me be wrong. I might take it as wrong. Let them show results, because let me conclude with one sentence. What did we do with Trincomalee and Galle for the last 70 years under SLPA? We were trying to build a marine yacht for the last 40 years. Yacht parking place.
And also, if I may,
just on that, the consequences that we could possibly face, if I'm not mistaken, already about 60 to 70% of the business of the Eastern Container Terminal is transshipment to India. If we continue down this path, I mean, Sri Lanka dishonoring international agreements seems to be becoming a trend. One government signs an agreement, another government comes in and says, okay, no agreement. This has happened when you switch from blue to green, green to blue, so on and so forth. Successive administrations, this has happened. Most recently, we saw it also with the actually in the same government with the Singapore, because there were two heads from two different parties in the same government with the Singapore Free Trade Agreement. I mean, at some point, don't you feel that these countries are going to, there are neighbors, our regional partners, etc. They'll just get sick of doing business with us, and they'll just not want to
first of all, I would
go
like
through the headache.
to cite, like very correctly, Shamir mentioned about the nationalistic idea with which this government came into power. So there have to be obviously and simply a balance of national qualities in this country, right? I mean, this is what would drive our economy. We need to have the proper balance. We cannot be selling everything in this country. We need to have our own system of growing as a nation. Where are we going to, where are we heading to if we don't do this? Now, I was talking about the professionals that we have in Sri Lanka. We need to develop these professionals and bring up the professionalism in them. Now, answering your question directly, like as an expert in international law, where my master's is based on international law, where, you know, sovereignty doesn't affect as long as the agreement has provision to opt out. So we have to look at the MOU, the tripartite agreement that has been entered between the GGG, what Rohan mentioned, right? Where to see whether there is a termination clause, where there is an opting out clause. So based on that, we can definitely look at that factor. Now, previously with regard to Hambantota deal, there were some differing views before this government came into and afterwards. But I mean, they simply agreed to what the former government said, that they would not turn back. Likewise, the LTR project, you look at the LTR project, we opt out. And now there is some talk that we may have to compensate. But it all depends on the MOU or the MOA or any other agreement that we have signed as a nation. Sovereignty plays high, you know, but
we had to pay compensation to China on Port City as well.
Yeah, lack of integrity against us. That is what
there is a lack
happen.
of integrity.
So we have to look at those provisions.
So our international partners, I mean, regardless of whether there is an opt-out clause in the agreement or not, if we keep signing agreements and then dishonoring those agreements, our international partners will, if they don't already, they will continue. They will view us as a nation without integrity
of us as a nation, right? So that will affect our sovereignty. But however, like I started saying, that we need to balance our national quality, right, with the economic aspects that we are looking at. We need to create this. We need to stabilize our markets. And SLPA has been always doing their duty to stabilize the market. This is what I think no one talked about here, right? Earlier, SLPA was giving at a very affordable rate, so that so whatever the private terminals that are in operation right now, they also came in par with those things. That is because SLPA could control that market share and bring down the prices. If we are now going to give the ECT to another private entity, it will not be creating a competitive market. It will distort the market. We need to stabilize the market. So this is where
private operators will compete amongst themselves, won't they?
Yeah, but SLPA is there to bring back what we really need for the country, the revenue for the country, and to stabilize the market. Because always the SLPA had been the largest earner for Sri Lanka.
Thank you for that point, Dr. Gunasekera. When you say SLPA is the largest earner, who are the biggest contributors to SLPA's earnings? Isn't it SAGT and CICT?
Yeah, SAGT, CICT, everybody together. So
but they are they provide the rents, let's say the rents that you collect from them annually.
Yeah.
That constitutes the bulk of SLPA's earnings and profit.
Yes.
Dr. Gunasekera.
Now you look at, as I started this discussion today, taking JCT as an example. JCT is has handled during the 2019 year, which was very operational, comparing to 2020 that was affected by the COVID-19. Right, in 2019, the JCT handled 2.3 million TEUs, comparing to 2 million SAGT, 2.9 CICT. So JCT was the second with a 32% stakeholder in the port. So are we to say that Sri Lanka Ports Authority has failed? No, we haven't.
No one
Only
is saying
thing
that
is
the
that
Ports
we
Authority
need to
has
have the
failed.
proper market policy here. We need to have the proper market policy. If we can market, now we have been marketing the SAGT, the JCT with a very shallow depth comparing to the other two terminals. So if we are going to have the ECT under fully operational under the SLPA, we can go a much longer way, a much longer mileage we can take. Now these are the pluses that we have. These are the strong points that we have. If we do a SWOT analysis, we would see that we have a lot of opportunities here, right? We have lesser threats. So why don't we look at that? I mean, we as a nation must look at that, the national quality that will bring the economic stability in this country. Now this is the exact point that I wanted to stress today. You know, if we can bring that, then as a nation, are we going to fail? No, we are going to win. That's my point.
But when you're talking about attracting investments and stuff, you need to work with global partners. Even China, its technologically advanced China didn't sort of crop up overnight, and they didn't do it solely through domestic means. They had investors coming in, there was technology transfer happening, and that's how they built up their own professionals. How are we going to say no to everyone that's coming from outside and still develop our professionals inside?
That's what I said, that we have to have the balance. Now see, we have given 2 terminals already. So aren't we to make money out of one? Now
we're making money out of the 2 that we have.
That's only as a landlord. If we go, then we rely upon the landlord-tenant relationship again.
But if the Sri Lankan taxpayer doesn't have to pay for the operation of those terminals and we're getting profits from it, I mean that's the money that we eventually use for our healthcare.
That is what I was telling, that we need to attract big liners to come. We need to attract big liners. Big liners will not come to JCT because the depth is very shallow, right? But whenever we open the ECT with 1,300 meter long quay, right? That can easily accommodate 3 ships in a row. Even CICT cannot do that.
But right now, Dr.
We don't have the money to do it.
There is no question about the Eastern Container Terminal. Why? Because the Sri Lanka Ports Authority will now manage.
Exactly.
So you should be happy that the situation has been arrested.
Yes.
However, now the issue is, as I said before, Nangi Penela Akkadena,
yeah.
Right? The Western Container Terminal is up for grabs now. You spoke about professionals. I know I'm putting you right at the spot here, but I have to do that because I want to know what the professionals are capable of. So when you speak about attracting TUs for the country, that is containers to the country from major liners, what can the professionals do here?
Now, when you talk about maritime professionals, they are in various fields, various different avenues.
Do we have anyone capable in Sri Lanka to go and directly speak to Maersk or CMA CGM or MSC or One Line? Do we have any individual in Sri Lanka who has that clout?
Of course, Shamir, in this maritime trade, we do have. I'm telling this with confidence because I was a former executive director of Ceylon Shipping Corporation. Now take Ceylon Shipping Corporation for example. Maybe it's not the real big market player, but how many professionals have we brought into Sri Lanka through?
If one might ask you, the Ceylon Shipping Corporation, you say it's not a major player, but I put, because you are here today, because 2 individuals, that is Captain LK also was the former chairman of the Ceylon Shipping
No,
Corporation.
I was never chairman.
You were never chairman, but you were a member of the corporation, right?
I started my career with Ceylon Shipping
So
Corporation. I
So you started off with your career. And so both of you are representing somewhat, directly or indirectly, the Ceylon Shipping Corporation. Tell me, how many TUs can you all attract?
It depends on
It's
what
easy
we have been given,
I am
what
asking
we
this
have
question
been
why
tasked with.
I'm asking this question why, Dr. Dan, because it's easy for someone to come on the show and say, I can do it, and never do it. You had President Gotabaya Rajapaksa saying, I will give free fertilizer to all at the election rally in Polonnaruwa, but never happened.
Now, I will come to your question, Swami. Let me clarify this area. Because as we took up this example of Ceylon Shipping Corporation, how many professionals have we developed? All these leaders, all these leaders in the maritime trade.
Don't get me wrong, it's not about professionals.
It's
not about professionals.
No, I'm just taking this as an example.
How many TUs can you all attract?
Yeah, that is why. I mean, if we are to attract these TUs, we have to attract the transshipment business. Now, transshipment business, as General Dayas said, it's more than 77%. The Indian transshipments
we have been
handling.
operating for 40 years.
Yes, exactly. So,
how many TUs have you all been able to attract?
now this is all what we have attracted by now. CICT, we are getting 2.9 million.
Captain LK just said, these TUs have been attracted because of the strategic location of the country. Now we are on an overcapacity. Now we have to develop the Eastern Container Terminal as a result. And henceforth, if you don't have a consortium to do this job, we'll never be able to do it. Is that a right analogy to come,
yes,
Captain LK?
yes, but the East Container Terminal was actually the part that was built today, was built before 2015. Right, in the last year of the beginning of 2015 and in 2014 they started.
2014
they started, right? And then 2015 we had the presidential election. Now I'm not taking anybody's sides, but I would correct Rohan in this issue about this 379 million that was offered to the South Container Terminal earlier. It was before the economic crunch came in, right? And then they cancelled the bids without going into history. There was 379 million. The highest bidder was PSA, right, which he is boasting about, right, that PSA is this, and we had a chance of getting PSA here, right, and we threw it away.
379 million US
379, no, 379 million without building it, the right to build the South Container Terminal. The bid was the highest bid, right, with Aitken Spence as their partner, local partner. And I don't know whether it is a 85-15 arrangement like that they have CST, but I think they were willing to give you a bigger chunk to Sri Lanka Ports Authority on that one, right? Okay, and then that bid was cancelled for whatever the reason. And then they were going to re-advertise internationally, and then the economic crunch came. Right, and there was nothing happening. We built a breakwater which cost us $300 million US, which we took it from ADB, and we are still paying it, and no one is talking about it. SLPA is paying it, or the Sri Lankan government is paying it. None of these terminals operating inside that is paying that loan or helping to pay the loan. Right, it's like you put a parapet wall around, which is the breakwater, and then you say, okay, you guys come and build, and you guys earn the money.
I want to switch to General Dayas Ratnakar with some numbers. What is the revenue annually of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority?
Yeah, it's about the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, about 60 billion, around 58 billion actually last year.
58 million US dollars or 58 million Sri Lankan rupees?
Rupees.
58 million Sri Lankan rupees only.
Billion.
58 billion Sri Lankan rupees.
Sri Lankan rupees was the last year.
Right, annually.
And last year.
It's
basically around that.
So when you, let's say, that's the top line, right? That's the top line. So when
that's
you pay
the revenue.
That's the revenue. So what is the profit of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority?
Its profit is about, say, last year it was around 12 billion, if I'm between 10 to 15 billion.
So 12 billion.
Yeah.
Let's say, What's the figure? 12 billion or 15 billion?
Yeah, I can say 10, 5, 5, 10, about 20 billion.
About 20 billion?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about 20 billion annual revenue for the Sri Lanka Ports Authority at present for SLPA. Right. Profit. So revenue is at 58 billion, 20 billion profit. Bottom line, the absolute profit for the SLPA.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka Eastern Container Terminal, what is the projected revenue?
Projected revenue is once again about 2.5 million TUs.
Yeah.
That comes about, say, once again about the exact figure I don't have, but anyway.
Just give me an approximate figure. I just want to quickly do a mathematical equation to see where we stand.
That's about the revenue basically will be about 50 billion.
50 billion?
No, about yes. Sorry about it. About once again about 60 to 70 billion.
Okay.
It's 2.5 million TUs, and TU lift on and off is about $75 per TU.
So let's say.
So it's multiply that by
absolute
just
profit
over 50
would be how
billion.
much? Absolute profit would be how much?
Yeah, once again it's the same equation like.
So it will be around 20 billion.
Yes.
So comes up to approximately around 111 million US dollars.
No, it will not
per
be
year.
20 billion because that 20 billion profit will come with other terminal revenues as well.
So from all the terminals, we're looking at approximately around 111 million US dollars per year for the all three terminals.
Yes.
So we're giving it away for 500 million US dollars for how long?
35 years.
35 years. So whoever is investing 500 million US dollars would earn that 500 million US dollars in less than 10 years.
Yeah. But you have to see the expenditure, what the other expenditure, not only you compare with the revenue, and the revenue is not going to be your profit, and the development has to take place. Likewise, earning, if you take, yes, it is.
In less than 10 years, they will make the money.
Yes, absolutely.
So why not, General Dayal have this money within Sri Lanka, as Dr. Dan is saying, use the professionals who are in Sri Lanka to attract the TUs required. Within 10 years, guess what? We have not sold our port, we have not leased our port, we've only got the investment required, and we have developed Sri Lanka as well.
So if you will not take decisions like that, and you can't, just because you have the terminal, all the business is not going to come to you.
No, but that's what Dr. Dan is saying. Get the professionals involved.
Yeah, the professionals, we can get the professionals involved and run a business, but you have to have, you have to market it, then you have to look at the geopolitics of it, then the business, the shipping lines, other business coming in, all that has to be taken into consideration.
So the real problem is, General,
yes,
this is not about the money.
Yes.
This is not about the investment.
Yes.
This is solely a geopolitical problem in the country.
Not solely. It is, there are so many factors. There are so many other factors get involved. Geopolitics is one of the major factors. Then the business, the nature of the business is another major factor. Then your operational system, the marketing, the efficiency, the productivity, the cost factor. There are so many other factors get involved.
So Rohan, interestingly, now you have two countries here. One is Japan and one is India in 2019. Japan is silent on whatever is happening right now. They are taking a step back and probably enjoying the fight between Sri Lanka and India on the matter. Why is that?
Well, Japan, the embassy has issued a statement that they are not out of the ECT agreement. That's all they have issued. Whereas India has gone beyond that and said that you have made commitments, and we look forward for the honoring of commitments. So this is G to G discussions, as Dan said. What is in the MOU, how to exit, or that is a different clause completely. But I don't agree with Dan's position of this. Our professionals can build our
Yes,
port.
I want to ask you that question
Right?
as well. Now, you are a professional. as
There
well.
are professionals and there are academics and there are businessmen. Sometimes academics and businessmen, academics and professionals are not good businessmen. The world of business is run by entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs is a mindset and how you position yourself worldwide. That's why I said if these gentlemen don't like to talk about Singapore, let's talk about the Dubai's ruler who thinks when you read his My Vision book, he will continuously talk about global. Now he has open citizenship for foreigners from last week, right? All foreigners with certain categories can apply for Dubai citizenship. His vision is different. Oman is looking at different. Even India, for that matter, India has lot of professionals, more professionals than Sri Lanka in the shipping professional, especially in the academic field. If you look at the Indian director merchant shipping division, highly professionals, absolute high professionals. Sri Lanka has lost that charisma in that over the years.
Now, Rohan,
right?
leaving out the academics aside, you mean that we do not have maritime professionals
We
in
do
Sri
have
Lanka?
maritime professionals.
I mean, how many maritime professionals, Sri Lankan maritime professionals are working
Dan,
abroad
Dan,
in
you didn't-
multinational companies?
Dan, you didn't
right?
listen to me. You
And
didn't
they are
listen to me.
leading.
You didn't listen to me. I said we have professionals, we have academics. I didn't say we don't have academics or
No,
professionals.
just leave out the academics, but
what
we'll
I
talk
said,
about the professionals.
What I am saying is whether those professionals can build global ports. That is the question. My question.
Our professionals are leading in some areas.
My question is
in the
our
maritime trade.
I know not
I
only
think
on
what Ron
maritime
is saying
trade,
is that our professionals are not entrepreneurs.
right? They are not entrepreneurs.
Also we have.
Right? We are. Look at the status we are as a country after 70% of 70 years of independence. Whatever profession, forget about. Whatever academics. Look at our university standards. They were ranked 100 among the first 100 in the world. Today beyond 2000. Why? Professionals are not there, academics are not there. They couldn't bring it up to the standards we want. The water resources, the electricity, the power generation problems we have. All we have professionals, we have academics. I am not denying. But we have not got into that global supply chains. We have not got that thirst of being part of the global supply chains. The aircraft manufacturers today manufacture parts in 35 countries. Why? Not because United States can't make an aircraft or European Union can't make an aircraft. No, there are business standards and entrepreneurship and competitiveness built into this whole game. Otherwise, all these countries would have been going into this so-called the self-sufficient model. We are talking here of a self-sufficient model indirectly. You can't have half-baked cakes. If you are a free, open economy, you need to adapt to the competition. Competition, what I am saying is, let's not talk about the rest of the world, Indian Ocean. The 6 competitors, how they operate.
But Rohan, do you agree that the present regime is trying somewhat to hoodwink the people, but by not giving away the Eastern Container Terminal, having that under the SLPA, and trying to get a negotiating committee to look in for investors for the Western Container Terminal?
I will tell you, not only present regime, many regimes hoodwink the Sri Lankan population. That is why we are in this status. They don't tell the truth. I mean, when they say that India doesn't have private terminals, that is a lie, no? So that to make the public opinion such, it's about telling the ordinary person the right to choose with the right information. Right to choose has to come with right information. So when you change this dynamics, saying that is cover it and talk nationalism, brings in religion into the business of ports, right? We are not going nowhere. We are not going nowhere as far as I am concerned. We are giving absolutely wrong signals to the international investor community. There are billions of dollars in the world market. Last 6 months, India attracted $36 billion of foreign direct investment, even with the COVID. The Japanese are moving out of China. Where are they going? Not to Sri Lanka. Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia. Why? Question why? Something is wrong with us. Why is Rwanda? Why is Ethiopia? Why is Bangladesh moving ahead of us? Something to look at first inwards. Either you say your policy is protectionism, inward and we can do everything policy, or you go on to a mixed mechanism of what is called joining the global supply chains.
Rohan, you were part of SEMA, right? Strategic Enterprise Management Agency.
I was.
And you were quite active there as well.
I was always against some of the policies.
Right.
Shamir, let me put one point to you now, referring to the Cabinet Memorandum 2210 of 2020 regarding the Memorandum of Cooperation for the Development of the Colombo South Port in Sri Lanka. Now, I would like to raise the point in justification of why we need to give this to the so-called party that we were referring to. What is the involvement of defense headquarters in Ahmedabad, India, that has expressed interest in the ECT investment?
I personally think we are diverting a little bit away from today's topic, right? We are talking about port operations and port terminals, and all these investors or so-called investors come here to make money. And
no, everyone.
Yes,
there's never a free lunch.
So you need to look at.
No one is going to invest money and expect
exactly
not to have return.
So therefore, they are coming here to make money. I don't know about geopolitics. I don't know about whether they are going to use Hambantota as a major port for naval exercises or whatever it is. Whether the India is, because none of those ports are designed for naval operations, right? They are designed for commercial ports, right? If the ECT is going to be operate as a container terminal, you can't berth any naval vessel there, because naval vessels are designed differently. That is why the naval berths are having their navy have their own berths, because that's where they can berth. They never use commercial berths, right? In Sri Lanka, because our navy is so small, we don't have naval berths. So whenever their navy vessels come here, they berth in commercial berths, but are again nominated by the government, right? Not by anybody else. Because the navy to navy, they appoint the navy, Sri Lankan navy, as the representative to do that. So therefore they nominate. But we went out of that as well. One time when the Chinese submarines came here, they berthed at CICT, right? But it should have been in a terminal, a berth that is nominated by the Navy.
But now you're speaking geopolitics.
No, I'm not talking about geopolitics. I'm not talking about geopolitics. I'm saying.
No, you said I don't want to talk about geopolitics, but you're talking about geopolitics.
I'm saying that these ports will never be used as naval ports. So it will never be used, right? It's a myth as far as
so you're also saying at the end of the day, it's,
No, General Ratna, a quick question for you. Ms. MasaKorala said that, successive administrations, not just this one, even previous one, the one before that, the one before that, and the one before that, have all been hoodwinking the Sri Lankan people because, it's politicking and no one really likes to tell the truth. Now, one of the sort of, let's say, pieces of legislation that has come by in the recent past that have been celebrated by all Sri Lankans, regardless of their political affiliation, was the Right to Information Act. The Right to Information Act. And under Section 9 of the Right to Information Act, it says it shall be the duty of the minister to whom the subject pertaining to any project has been assigned to communicate 3 months prior to the commencement of any such project to the public generally and to any particular persons who are likely to be affected by such project all information relating to the project that is available with the minister as on the date of such communication. Shouldn't, for example, the memorandum of cooperation that was signed with India and Japan, and now more recently the new report that has been produced by the committee of experts appointed by the minister, shouldn't this information be made public? So that the public then have the right to choose based on the right to have truthful information.
Yeah, of course, this was signed during the previous regime, which they have not followed, and they are the people who introduced all this, and they are the people who have violated this. As a result, now when this government came in, we make it public and discussion. This discussion was not there when they signed the ECT agreement with memorandum of understanding of cooperation with India, Japan, and all that. These discussions were not there. When Hambantota was sold, these discussions were not there at this rate. And why this time? Because this government has been very sensitive to the public opinion. As a result, they open it up, and so many discussions, so many this thing came up.
Going beyond discussions, General Ratna, don't you think that either on the Ports Authority website or on the Ministry of Ports and Shipping website. Well, the minister is the person who's responsible for doing this, so maybe the ministry website, not the SLPA website, that the minister should simply make this information publicly available, where anyone can
actually
the discussions happen with the stakeholders, but for the public in general to have an informed opinion.
This time the process start. I'm responsible. I'm also partly responsible for this one. This time when we started this negotiation or the discussions of this one, we opened it up, and the process that we have been following is the proper process according to the Sri Lankan law. And we discussed within the project committee, feasibility studies were done. We projected it to the ministry took it to the cabinet took a decision. Then cabinet appointed 2 committees, one to the PC, the project proposal, and to develop the project proposal. Thereafter they gave it to the cabinet appointed negotiating committee. We negotiated it, and then we we had to stop it there and give to the government saying that this will not work. That's the process. And then if it worked, this would have gone to the cabinet, from cabinet to the parliament back to the cabinet, and that is the process that we have been following this time. So I think it is the most transparent system. As a result, all the people, everybody came to know, even we were discussing with the trade union, we were discussing with other parties and the management, all that. So even we invited the other stakeholders of the port, like the shipping industry, the other freight forwarders, and all the other people. We had discussions, number of discussions during the past few months. So likewise, I can't say more transparency than that.
But General, if you are saying the government is sensitive towards public opinion,
yes,
it should be that the West Container Terminal also not given.
Yes, it has not been given. This is the process, beginning of the process. Now the cabinet decision, appointing this project proposal committee and appointing a negotiating committee, that's the beginning, and they will project, and this same process will come.
But based on what India is saying right now, and based on what Rohan said about Japan,
so all those
they won't let it go. They will make sure by hook or by crook they get a part of that terminal at the port, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there is no, I don't say that it shouldn't have happened, and because the PPP system, out of 3 terminals at the beginning, I told you, 2 to be private-public partnerships, and 1 to be operated by Sri Lanka Ports Authority. There are reasons for that, because, and all this we were discussing. While we were discussing, we were saying we have the JCT, we could have Rohan say we could have opened. Yes, that is also one option. But JCT, the nature of the shipping industries today is such that ships are becoming bigger and bigger, container ships are becoming bigger and bigger, because time to come, according to the master plan that we have, by 2035, JCT will be somewhat outdated. So we need to have, the Port Authority has to have a terminal. So that is the very reason Port Authority, people at the Port Authority, the trade union and the management, everyone saying we need a terminal. That is how it is. But Western Terminal, we are quite open, and so government is open. That's the policy of the government, to open it up. And the way that we are going to get the investor, you can have your questions, everybody can have your questions, we can discuss. Then the government will come to the right decision.
Discuss and do what ultimately?
Do the right thing.
What is the right thing?
Right thing, at this moment I can't say. My thinking, I can't say it is not the right thing. It is not only my opinion, everybody's opinion. Finally, we come to the final conclusion.
No, but when it came to the Eastern Container Terminal, General Ratnakar, you were very vocal. You said we should give it and all that. But now the Western Container Terminal, you are taking a step back.
What? This is it. Actually, Western Container Terminal, all this time, it didn't come to equation. It was a separate thing altogether.
No, but trade union activists and all of them said that the government is trying to give away the Western Container Terminal.
There are few people at this moment, they are talking, but they have given in writing. The trade unions, all the trade unions, 23 trade unions except one, all others have given in writing. They are willing to give Western Terminal out. They have given in writing. If you look at the 7 or 8 points that they have given, one point is Western Terminal, trade union, if you want to see. So that's it. So that's basically, as Rohan or everybody says, we have to open it up for international business.
So Dishal, I'll give you an opportunity to pose questions because you've been
Silent.
very silent.
Been observing. To General, I'd like to ask a question
Yes,
from you.
please.
Now, you talked about how the government is very sensitive towards public opinion. Wouldn't you say that this situation is sort of like a situation where the government was a little too sensitive? Because there's a public outcry with the trade unions and all that. So what if later down the line, the same kind of outcry comes towards the WCT, the Western Container Terminal? Would the government stand its ground?
No, hypothetically you are making this, and hypothetically I will say also answer, if there's a situation developed like that, definitely government will have to think of it, take the people's opinion into consideration. But I don't think, because people are also not going to be that, like when you open it up, when we discuss about the nature of the business, then even here, the trade union I am having on a daily basis, weekly basis, we have discussions. They are very clear, and our trade union, though they some people say that they are irresponsible, shouting and this and that, but they are somewhat, I see in relation to other trade union, I am not running down other trade union, but my experience with the port trade union, they are quite responsible. They are quite understanding. They say why they are fighting for this. They are very particularly saying because Sri Lanka Ports Authority will not have a terminal of our own time to come within next 10 to 15 years. We need to have a deep water terminal, Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Then only we can also be equal among other operators. Likewise, so they have their reasons, and Port Authority has reasons. Based on that only, they are saying. But giving it out.
Very quickly, Captain LK.
None of these investors who wants to come and invest in these terminals, who has invested already in the SAGT and CICT, is not giving you volume guarantees. They're not giving you volume guarantees, saying that if you give it to us, we will bring so much volumes, right? The TEUs that you're talking about, right? If you look at SAGT, right? SAGT, how did they started? They had the P&O, bringing in 350,000 TEUs at that time to JCT. The moment SAGT started, that volume went to SAGT. So it was across the bay marketing that they did, right? And see, straight away, Sri Lanka Ports Authority lost 350,000 TEUs capacity, right? And which they were handling, right, before, right? And then Sri Lanka Ports Authority also lost the partners who were handling with P&O, the feeders and all went to SAGT. So in all, we lost about 500,000 TEUs at once. SAGT, this JCT that was generating. So SAGT, what they did was they took our volumes on there. But at that time, the people didn't worry too much. They went out, marketed, and within about 1 year, they filled up that and came back to full capacity, right? And when the CICT came in, right, they didn't guarantee any volumes, right? They took volumes from JCT, they took volumes from SAGT. If you ask the SAGT, JCT management, they will tell you that their volumes were taken in there initially. And then they brought in marketing, and then these people went and so the JCT, which is inferior, you say, is the first one that was started by the open economy introduced by UNP at that time, right? But the UNP did not say that they will give it away to Japanese. The Japanese built the JCT on a loan that was given to us, right? And they say that the open economy is to work with partners, but the UNP did not give it away. They just said, we are going to operate it and we are going to keep it. And the Japanese did not say, we want to be a part of that. They said, we want to give you a built one.
Captain LK, one of the points that Rohan brought in was, we don't have visionary leaders now, like individuals like Lalitha, for an example, who did a lot for the Sri Lanka ports at that time.
We had a vision for ports at that time, but then the vision changed, right? So I don't know who changed that, right? We had a clear-cut vision. The Japanese had a clear-cut vision for QEQ, which was now operating as SAGT. right? They also had a vision for Colombo South Harbour. Colombo South Harbour was in the pipeline for a long time, right? Before they really put up the breakwater, right? So, but then the things got delayed due to various reasons politically, right? But they were in the pipeline. The South Harbour, it was very clearly told that you need to build deep water because the shipping industry is changing, the ships are changing, so therefore you need to do that.
Yeah,
So,
very quickly, General, yes. Very quickly, yeah.
Yeah, that's, you're saying that visionary leaders and all that. Yeah, that's the nature, I mean, that's the reality of this country. But if you take the Port Authority, Port per se, 1979, Mr. Lalitha, we were talking about, that was the first golden era of the port, history of our port. The second best, so far the best golden era is from 2005 to 2015. That's, if you look at the facts. After 97 years, we developed the southern breakwater, southern port, and breakwater was built. Within 4 years, 6.8 million 8 kilometer breakwater, 400 million US dollar each. 3 terminals, new terminal. That was in 2008 we started, 2012 we finished. So CICT also before the 2013 we started. Then 2 terminals came. That was after 97 years, Rohan, Shahir. So that is how, and that is a superb decision taken. As a result, we are discussing all these issues. Yeah. Otherwise, we would have been.
So that's very subjective, General, because you are now sitting as the chairman of the Port Authority with the present regime.
It is not subjective. It is, if you really go into statistics, if anyone is differing, that even Hambantota came during that period. This is, if you
so let the people decide what was the best era.
Yeah, people can decide. This is people to decide. I must tell this, otherwise how can people, media has to disseminate all these things to the people.
But right. I differ on that with Chairman.
Yeah.
Actually the Port of Colombo first design was not the South Port, the North Port, going up to the Galilee North River. Right? It was the original designs before, in the 80s, before the South Port. South Port came in the late 80s, early 90s, and during President Chandrika Kumaratunga's time it came into need for development. So the SLPA engineers decided that we give up the North Port because there were siltation issues designed on that particular design. I have the drawings also. So it goes back very far to the design concept. Now we have come back to the North Port also, and also General, just to give the public the JCT won't go closing down, I will tell you that much. Already some of the Port Authority people are designing to move the JCT berths 100 meters back and dredge it to deeper draft. That is one thing. When I was there in the board, we decided to dredge it to 14.25, and SAGT area came up to 15 meters, which they dredged a little later. But JCT is the biggest terminal in South Asia, longest and the biggest terminal in South Asia. It's not operating, it's at optimum because it has not been uplifted, its cranes are old. So that is government. The minister, the current minister, recently on a TV debate said that it is not running profitably. Actually, we are getting money from the other terminals. He told that. Today's paper, one of the gentlemen have written about it on Financial Times, the detail about what minister has said. So you can go all around the clock. Question is, are we going to develop our port with private-public partnerships on a landlord model? That is all I am talking about here.
So
that is the policy I am talking about.
All 4 gentlemen can speak at the end. You all will get 2 minutes each to wrap up. So we're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation. We are discussing about the future of Sri Lanka in terms of our ports. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We are in the final round. We start off the final round for 2 minutes with each speaker. to wrap up and sum up their thoughts. Let's start off with Dr. Dan Gunasekera, former Executive Director of the Ceylon Shipping Corporation.
Now, what I would like to emphasize is that I'm not against privatization. But however, we need to now at least protect our national assets, because all these years we are blaming our rulers for giving away the national assets or not properly administering the national assets. It's now for us to administer properly in a very balanced manner. I'm not against privatization, but privatization is not pure privatization. It should not be pure liberalization. There has to be a balance. There has to be a level playing field, because the government or the state-owned properties play a huge role, and state enterprises play a huge role in any country's economy. And therefore, we need to have this balance. So in this, taking this view into consideration, with regard to the national ports, we must have the national port policy in place, proper national port policy in place, in order to take our way forward in a very prosperous manner. So I'm not against privatization, but we need to balance these values. We need to look at our national interest. We need to stabilize these areas. So this is what we had been arguing, we had been discussing, and I have put forward my views, and I always stick to my views. And I mean, it's because we are maritime professionals. We need to safeguard the maritime interest of Sri Lanka. We are a maritime nation. We are an island covered entirely by the sea. So our biggest economy is the blue economy, not agriculture. We haven't explored the blue economy to the fullest. At least now, we must do that. We must go out of our thinking that we cannot do something. You know what we say, the gobbles theory. We must come out of this gobbles theory. We must look out of box. And this is our country. So we need to protect our national economy with all the national assets that we have. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dan Gunasekera. We now move our attention to the very vocal Rohan MasaKorala, CEO of the Shippers Academy.
Thank you, Shamin. Well, first of all, talking of the ECT project itself, the president of this country very clearly said the project was going to be 51% owned by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority. So I don't see where the balance is gone there. I cannot identify when 51% in any company is the controlling share of a business or a company. So that has been changed today to 100%. So I am at no point, I have never told that Sri Lanka Ports Authority should not be a partner of any terminal. It should be partnering all the investments in the Port of Colombo, but it cannot be the landlord, regulator and the owner. All three things cannot be done by one party. Then you are not playing a level playing field with the rest of the terminal operators. Very simple as that. So in my opinion, even CICT, SLPA should have had a 35% stake, because as Captain very clearly said, we have to pay for the breakwater. So we would have had better revenue there. But today those two terminals are still bringing a large amount of revenue to the Sri Lanka Profits Authority, if it is showing a profit. Some years it has been bailed out because of the revenues coming through from the other two terminals, particularly if you look at year 2016. So the issue here is Sri Lanka is trying to go against the trend of the global ports. Why I say is, even the United States have given its strategic port to Chinese companies to manage, Seattle, Long Beach, Los Angeles. China also has given strategic ports to foreign companies like in Arabia. Israel's Haifa is giving its ports to the Arabic UAE port DP World. So there is, if people can't see this picture, something is happening around the world in this particular business, and Sri Lanka is now trying to swim against it and giving mixed signals to the international community. I feel a bit scared for Sri Lanka, because we have seen how we have messed up Trincomalee. I have a story for that. I always tell at very different forums. We messed up Trincomalee Right Royal, and we messed up Gaul, and the Yacht Marina went to Middle East. So you see, you have two things that we have messed up under Sri Lanka Ports Authority anyway, and now we are going into another direction in the Port of Colombo with mixed signals to the global community.
Right, thank you very much, Rohan MasaKorala. We now move our attention to Captain Lalitha Jayasuriya, also known very fondly as Captain LK.
Thank you. I started the program with the policy, and then they also agreed that there should be a national policy in running the ports, right? And the national policy should be in accordance with the laws of the country. It cannot be different, then these things can be challenged in a court of law, right? So far it has not happened, but if it happens, then the Ports Authority Act will really come into play, right? So we need to have a clear-cut policy, and the policy needs to be carried forward by all the government that comes into power, right? And the policy needs to be made according to the law of the country, or else change the law and then make the policy, right? So I don't see a policy at all. I don't see whatever is happening going according to Sri Lanka Ports Authority Act. There are differences here. And then when we gave away the terminals, in my term, when we gave away the terminals to the private sector, is it with the Sri Lankan private sector, or is it with the or the international private sector? Okay, so there's a question mark. What private sector are you talking about? Is it Sri Lankan private sector? Or are you talking about the international private sector? And then when we gave it away, did we lose anything? Now I couldn't complete it, that the 379 million bid that we cancelled, and then the economic crunch came in, and we gave the CICT away for $176 million. So we lost 200 million because of our hesitation about giving it to a major port operator who would have helped us a long way in developing our port. Adani, they say they are operating ports in Gujarat, and they are not even in the top 100. Right here we have a port operator, PSA, coming in, which is number 2 port in the world. They could have told us how to market, how to do the transshipment business, and we threw it away, right, and gave it to CICT, which is Chinese operator, and the Chinese are not guaranteeing us any volume. So I will stop at that, and then I would come to SLPA tariff, right? Now SLPA tariff, we provide navigational services to all these vessels going into the private terminals, or majority stakeholder private terminals. And what are they giving it? We have 3 tugs that are now hired by Sri Lanka Ports Authority, paying nearly $4,500 a day per tug, right? And then on top of that, Sri Lanka Ports Authority has to give fuel to that. So they are costing about $5,000 to $15,000 for the tugs only, other than the tugs they operate.
Yeah.
And they are not making that $15,000. So they need to look at the tariff about the navigational services. And then we talk about professionals coming into the scene here, right? And he talked about professionals.
Very quickly,
yes. So the professionals, look at the pilot service, which was completely British. Today is completely Sri Lankans. And these huge ships are piloted by Sri Lankan master mariners, not foreigners. So yes, this is one area where Sri Lankan professionals are completely dominating.
Thank you very much, Captain LK. Last but not the least, General Dayasuriya Ratnayaka, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority.
So first, let me thank Sirasa and you people for giving us this opportunity. And this development of port, is known as the heart of the nation. So this heart of the nation, we all have to get together and develop it. And we have been discussing now all this time, the last 3-4 weeks, it came to a very high climax when the Eastern Terminal issue came up. And what I have been the Chairman Port Authority, what I am saying, what I have understood, and being very important, Sri Lanka being located at the right center, almost in the center of the world, the port business is very sensitive. It is politically, economically, socially, geopolitically, and all aspects, national security aspect, it is very sensitive issue and sensitive subject, sensitive business here. So you can't take decisions, you can't discuss things in isolation. Therefore, we have to take all these factors into consideration. Being located in the almost right in the center of the world, we have that comparative advantage. Though India has all that, and they have not come closer to in comparison to our port capacities. So why? Because they don't have that comparative advantage, though they are a huge country. Because we, being a small nation, we have that comparative advantage, but we all have to get together, the professionals, operators, government, and everybody, media especially. We all have to get together and transform this comparative advantage into a competitive advantage. Otherwise, we will not be able to make our headway. So media has a serious role to play. Based on what the media is disseminating to the people, people come to conclusions and they are coming up. Therefore, the professionals, and lastly, I would like to invite all of you, media, the professionals, everybody, those who are speaking about the port and giving it or not giving it, and all these people to come into the port, and then we can educate you on what is happening. As Rohan said, we have to transform. We have to transform not only the operational part, but recruitment system. Port of Colombo can be operated with about 3,000 people maximum, but we have 10,000 people. And so these are the issues that we have. Then the corruption, then other malpractices, then all the mismanagement, everything is there. In spite of all that, we are making profits, just what it is. But if you really put all these things into right perspective, we can bring our port to be one of the best in this part of the world. So I am inviting everybody, we get together and develop this port to the best interests of our country.
Thank you very much, General Ratnayaka. Thank you very much, Dr. Dan Gunasekera, former Executive Director, Ceylon Shipping Corporation, Captain Lalitha Jayasuriya, also known as Captain LK, Master Mariner, and also General Retired Dayar Ratnayaka, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, as well as Rohan MasaKorala, CEO of the Shipyards Academy. I know, Rohan, you are unwell today, but thank you very much for joining us tonight on the show to give your opinion about what you think about the Sri Lanka ports. Thank you very much, Nadim. Thank you very much, Disal, and thank you very much, John, for joining us this evening on the show. I leave you tonight with a thought, not a quote, but a thought. The Sea of Sri Lanka is our sea. Our leaders must protect our interests before looking out for other nations' interests. Take care and good night.